I'm not wasting my time on him. Next. Please.
Hi. Just a real quick question. In Sam Harris's book, The Age of Faith, he does seem to leave open the idea of either spiritual and mystical experiences on an individual level. Having just begun your book, I don't know if you're headed in that direction, or do you part company with Sam Harris on his position on that?
No, Mr. Harris, who's a very brilliant man indeed, and who knows much more about neuroscience than I do, does think that there can be consciousness independent of the brain. And we are at my, I think, very attractive, and I hope I can recommend to you, exquisite magazine, Free Inquiry, having a debate. I mean, he's our newest columnist, and we're having a discussion about this very thing, about whether to be an atheist is to be a materialist or not. Sam Harris is definitely an atheist. He's some kind of a Buddhist because he doesn't think that it's a religion. And obviously there's a case to be made for saying it isn't one. And that kind of conversation, I think, is really incredibly worth having. I mean, I do not know whether a neuroscientific breakthrough will ever discover that there could be a numinous penumbra around the brain that can't be explained by the meat of the cerebellum itself. I am certainly not going to be the one who arbitrates on this point. But I must say, very skeptical about Buddhism. And I dare say you know what the Buddhist says to the hot dog vendor. You don't? He says, make me one with everything. Yeah, well, wait, that's only part one, because the Buddhist then hands over a $50 bill and waits while he munches, and nothing happens. And he says to the hot dog vendor, okay, what about my change? And the hot dog vendor says, change comes only from within. I myself have never heard anything more profound than that from Eastern so-called contemplation. And I told you what I thought was the atrocious and immoral line of predestination and reincarnation that the Buddhists take on the massacre in Cambodia. And I don't like the idea of the Dalai Lama being an inherited kingship and godship. I think that's a disgusting idea. And I don't like the way that the situation of the military dictatorship in Burma is one of building entire temples in the name of Gautama Buddha. And above all, I don't like the idea that the Buddha, the Gautama, was born through a slit in his mother's side, because yet again you get it. Anything but the vagina. Disgust for females. Contempt for females. Revulsion from menstrual blood. Revulsion from the female genitalia. I personally do not regard the female genitalia in that way. I hope you don't either.
Question again? Here, here's this lady here.
Thank you.
No, I didn't say email genitalia. I'm sorry. There's always someone who doesn't get it.
I have many... I'm trying to distill some of my thoughts because you evoked an enormous amount of reactions within me.
Woof.
I consider myself a traditional Jew, and I agree with everything that you have said. I also disagree with the appellations of this is a man of faith and this is not a man of faith. I mean, I think that is very unfair and absolutely very wrong to say. I don't think that Judaism quite fits into your category of religion with a capital R, because it offers you so many different parts of being Jewish. You can be an absolute atheist and be part of Judaism. You could be Orthodox, ultra-Orthodox, conservative, Reform, Reconstructionist, humanist, who does not want to even, I will in a moment, have the concept of God, and also be anything that you care to be, and Judaism accepts you. If some ultra-Orthodox rabbis issue statements that are not in consonance with what you have just said, then we don't have to agree with him, and we're still Jews. So this is my question.
Yeah.
When, thank you, when Christian religionists and evangelicals say to me, but you don't understand, we have a mission for you. You need to be saved. You must accept Jesus Christ, or you cannot be saved. What shall I answer them?
God, well, I mean, that's the second bit of the question is very easy to answer. I mean, tell them to fuck off. My friend Catholic Pollitt, the Southern Baptist Convention announced, it does it almost every year. This time we're raising a real fund. They do it all the time for the conversion of American Jews. We must bring them back to Jesus. We must save them. And Catholic Pollitt, who I've had many, many quarrels with in my life about many, many things, but who's a beautiful writer in a way, said she waited in night after night on the Upper West Side and West 88th Street, just waiting for them to come and knock on her door. She was braced. She was ready. They never came. It's a huge disappointment. Of course, the Christians can't ever be happy until the Jews do this. Because, and it's the same with the Muslims. And by the way, I may say, I apologize for slight flippancy in my first answer. Here's the situation. If the Nazarene preacher from Galilee ever really existed, there's no question who he met. He met the Jewish people first and came partly from their tradition. If the Prophet Muhammad really ever existed, I doubt both these propositions very much, but to the extent that any narrative about this can be told, the first encounter he had was with people whose first religion was Judaism. The Jews took a look at both these guys and said, no, this is not the Messiah. This is not the Redeemer. We reject them. Do you suppose they're ever going to be forgiven for it? Of course they're not. Of course they're not. The hatred for there isn't a Christian or a Muslim in the world of a real serious kind who wouldn't have to hope to give everything they owned for a chance of some face time with either Jesus Christ or the Prophet Muhammad. It would have to be the thing they most wanted to do. They must want it in the same way as I would like to have met Shakespeare or George Eliot. It must be the most important thing to them. And only one people, and it's the same in both cases, met their false prophets. And they both turned away and said, this isn't genuine. Do you think it's going to be forgiven? No. Do you think this has led to a huge amount of violence and turmoil and heresy hunting and fascism and genocide? Yes. Do you think it's over yet? Better not believe that. The worst is yet to come. They're never going to forgive it. That's what you get when you set Bronze Age myths in conflict with each other and let civilized people act as if they're for real.
Actually, Christopher, it is possible to take exactly the opposite meaning from that example.
Think?
Yeah, I think that one of the interesting things about the gospel narratives, at least in the Christian scriptures, is that if you're going to believe any part of the evidence of the Gospels, there were people who heard the Son of God teach them about morality and life, and said, turned around and went away. So there was there at the beginning an absence of coercions, and certainly if he was the Son of God, he could have persuaded them through what? Some force or other, but didn't. So, couldn't you take a hopeful?
You know what? I think not, because I have a passage about this in my book. It's basically an attack on an Australian fascist called Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
His various demagogies, but which come from, as you know, a very theologically crazy father,
right.
who wants to reverse Vatican II.
If you remember, he wanted to rip out my lungs.
Indeed, and mine too, and anyone who came into contact with
Kill Frank
one of those
Rich's
people
dog.
who shouldn't have a drink. As well.
No, never.
But his father's attack on Vatican II was a very serious and delicate one. Now, here's the situation. In his film, he tries to restore the idea of Jewish guilt for deicide, as you must have noticed. Fortunately, a lot of people didn't notice it, but okay. Now, the church has repudiated this.
Yes. Nostra Aetate.
Now, you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but Nostra Aetate is 1968.
No, wait a minute. I'm sorry. I'm wrong about that. 60 earlier. And written by an American, by the way.
Well, I was about to say that it was fractionally earlier.
Yeah, it is a little
nearer the time of Vatican II, but...
Somebody knows?
Okay, in the 1960s. At least they're saying that...
It was in the Vatican Council, yeah.
I think it's 65, because I thought I had it down as 20 years after the start of the Nuremberg trial. 20 years after the start of the Nuremberg trial, the Church officially says we do not hold all Jews guilty of deicide. That's quite late. Now, I'm not trying to be funny.
Moves very slowly.
I was actually trying to make you cry rather than make you laugh, but okay, giggle all you want. Why do they wait that long? Ask yourself. It's in my book. Why? Because if the story is true, which I do not believe it is, but if it is true, the only people present, definitely present, certifiably present, are the Jewish people. They were there, and he was one of them. If you say, okay, the Jews are excused, they can go, how can you go on saying we were all present at Calvary? We were all guilty of nailing the hands and the feet. That we all spat in the face of Christ. How can you keep anyone else guilty of this if you have let go the one people who you can be reasonably sure were there? That's why they hung on so long. 2,000 years of lying and bigotry and fabrication and prejudice and pogroms every Easter and hideous representations and misrepresentations. Why couldn't they give it up? Why wouldn't it? It would be so easy if we think of the church as yet another ecumenical thing. Why give it up? Let the Jews go. You've let everyone go. We're not all guilty. We're not all soaked in original sin. We're not all saved by ghastly human sacrifice. We're not all implicated in this filthy cult of death. That's why it took them so long. And that's why the real believers in this myth can't let it go. And that's why I'm right, I think, in saying that religion, so far from making people behave better, has always been responsible for making them behave very much worse in barbaric, arcane, elaborate ways that no morally normal person would ever allow. And we would be better if we outgrew this barbaric cultism. And that'll have to be my last word, because it's 8:30 and it's cocktail hour, and from now on... And from now on, I can only be compassionate to anyone who has a receipt. This is America. Thank you.